Hello and welcome to your IBM update for June 2023. A snapshot of news and views on what's been happening in the IBM community for the past 4 weeks as reported by Proximity, your premier partner for IBM solutions, support and development. This month we're in conference season, so just as a bit of a change of pace, I'll be giving you an insight into what it's like to attend. So first we have the UK's iPower event in Northampton, and then we'll take a short trip over to Prague where Common Europe is being hosted. Oh, and there is the small matter of a 35th birthday too, so let's get to it. Now at the beginning of June we enjoyed the 2-day iPower event in Northampton. And inside the main Expo hall we found vendors representing all aspects of from modernisation to managed services. The speakers were equally as varied, with security expert Carol Woodbury hosting workshops on how to build and maintain security on the IFS, and Redbook's author Brigitte Hauser discussing JSON and web services. But there was so much more to digest other than these topics, including cloud deployment, modernisation, open source and more. But with this being the 35th birthday of the IBM, it was Scott Forstie whose keynote speech on the 35 things I love about IBM that provided the highlight. Now I'm not going to regurgitate his entire presentation, I'll pick just 6 from the 35. First on the list was that IBM was a platform built for business. Expanding on this, Scott went to speak about the architecture, in the fact that it's open and includes the utilisation of technologies such as the Portable Application Solutions Environment, or PACE for short. And with Scott being something of an SQL evangelist, it came as no surprise that SQL popped up too, with both the SQL query engine being a cut above the classic query, and the ever-increasing list of SQL enhancements native to I. Scott also picked IBM Navigator for I, with its modern UI for accessing, monitoring and managing your IBM I. For multi-threaded abilities since 1996, for native support, and 1999 for native IBM multi-threading on DB2. And finally, continuing with the ever-evolving nature of the OS, the support of REST and RESTful APIs on the platform too. Scott even managed to find a way to provide RESTful services for dad jokes. Take it away, Scott.
Why do proctologists love the IBM I? Waiting for the groan.
And the frivolities didn't end there, as entertainment was extended into the evening at the Gala Dinner, with a variety of very entertaining guest speakers, some really great food, and as a final presentation by the National Museum of Computing, a bit of a brain teaser to get the grey matter moving too. But the undoubted star of the show was cake. A 35th birthday specially commissioned IBM cake no less. And here's my own. Happy birthday IBM. International Power was truly a wonderful event, and on its completion, only a couple of days later, I was on a flight to Prague for the Common European Congress. Hosted at the Vienna House Diplomat Hotel, Common Europe was a 3-day event that took over the entirety of the second floor. With registration over, the first glimpse of the main Expo hall that had over 400 fellow IBMiers welcomed with Czech beer. Then the next morning it was time for the first keynote speech, which included a very loud introduction from the Common President introducing Common to all the 400 delegates. Whew. But perhaps the most anticipated speech of the morning came from Steve Sibley, the VP and IBM Product Manager for Power Systems. He spoke on digital transformation, but it was his words regarding the IBM community that brought him the room.
I can't iterate enough how much the community of IBM is IBM. And IBM is always held up as one of the prime examples inside IBM.
Now, continuing with this theme, later in his speech, he introduced Tom McPherson, the VP for IBM Power Systems. In celebrating the 35th anniversary of IBM, during this speech, Tom explained that
IBM 7.5 tech refresh is in flight, and I have to give a big shout out to the 35-year anniversary for IBM. What an enduring platform, tens of thousands of clients around the world, 115 countries, and my experience just in the last 12 months of being with iPower, it is the highest client passion that I've ever seen, like tattoo level client passion, and I would venture to say the most loved platform we have in the company, because you hear the word love more with IBM than any other platform.
Indeed, Steve went on to demonstrate the tattoo levels of client passion by showing a few shots of IBM related tattoos, and even went on to hand out some I Love IBM tattoo transfers to the willing audience. The room was packed, and with a record-breaking attendance of over 400 people and all seats taken, delegates were spilling out into the corridor. Indeed, keeping this number of people fed and watered must have been a mammoth task. Thankfully, Team Common Europe didn't let the community down, with a selection of fine pastries, cakes, sandwiches and more available after every session. Truly a belt-notch altering delight. It wasn't only food in the main expo hall, there was entertainment too. An IBM photo booth, for example, to take a celebratory 35th birthday photo with your peers. Spin plates with the good people of Remain, or, like I did, courtesy of Fresh, get away from it all, jump into VR and scream around the track for a bit. Indeed, there were a plethora of vendors there, representing everything you could possibly need from the platform and available to answer any questions you had too. Later in the day, I was indeed most fortunate to receive an invitation from Fresh to join them on the rooftop terrace. Here we enjoyed an evening barbecue with great company, more excellent food, and enjoyed the sunset over Prague. And in the morning, we were back at it and into sessions and workshops, this time hosted by the vendors. My first session was hosted by Remain Software CTO Wim Jongman, and he discussed using ChatGPT with RDI. Wim first gave a brief history of AI, then went through a practical exercise in real time of creating a simple Java program using ChatGPT. Further on, he explained how ChatGPT can support your development activities, from crafting SQL instructions to creating and decoding legacy code. Here he introduced a dedicated API for RDI Eclipse that allowed you to write code faster and more efficiently, all within the one GUI. It was all very impressive, and all delegates left with huge grins. The other vendor presentation I'll feature was the Web Language Shootout by Alan Seiden, principal at Seiden Group. He provided an unbiased opinion on the open source web language choices for API and web development. His parameters for qualification were threefold. First, the language could provide and consume API services. Second, the language could drive web applications. And third, the language can call and be called by both RPG and COBOL. Now, I encourage you to review his presentation in its entirety, but the three qualifying languages were PHP, possibly the most popular web language on the planet, Python, the most modern and clean, and Node.js, an efficient JavaScript runtime. When looking at each language, he applied some objective criteria. These included the stability and support of a language, its longevity, any superpowers it has or what it's really good at, and the real litmus test, how simple it is to create a Hello World script. Alan went on to explain that the rate of change in a language and stability are two opposing forces.
Faster, it's like this, the speed of change, rate of change, how dynamic, and stability are kind of two opposing factors.
He left the decisions on what language was appropriate to the audience, but went on to provide some considerations. With PHP, you'd enjoy the most established web language on the IBM I, with a wealth of support, repositories and frameworks to choose from, with a continually growing community. Python is dependable, clean language with exciting prospects, but does have some compatibility issues if you're looking to push the envelope. Similarly with Node.js, this is stable but still evolving and could be a favourite if you're familiar with JavaScript already. And this discussion, hosted by Alan and the one previous by Wim, were just two examples of what was a packed agenda for delegates to attend. Many of the presentations are now already available on the Common website. I would sincerely recommend you go check them out. On the final evening of the Expo, delegates were invited to Municipal House in the centre of Prague for an evening of culture. Here we were greeted by a champagne reception, a tour of the historic building, and divine music by concert pianists. My thanks to Igor, his pianist daughters, and the event team for organising such a beautiful evening. One final snippet before we wrap it up for this review. Steve will introduce Bill Starke, the Chief Architect for Power Processors at IBM. He provided a history of power and gave some insight into the future too. But it was his words that, comparatively speaking anyway, IBM I is still very much a young'un in terms of platforms in the industry.
I hope you see a trend here. We're sort of getting from, ancient to, more and more kind of modern evolved platforms. So, well, where did IBM I come from? The first product to come out, 1978, the System 38. So if we look at this, and if you're ever, interacting with anybody and they say, oh, you're running on that, what's that old AS400 IBM I thing? You can just look at them with disbelief and say, that is the most modern platform on the planet. So what are you talking about?
And finally, a conference wouldn't be a conference without a goodie bag. First, we have the bag as received by IUG, and in here we have all the usual stuff, including, of course, the conference brochure. Moving on to Common Europe, we have a tote bag. So perhaps IUG is certainly winning on the back side of things. And in here we have, of course, the Common agenda and booklet. But in addition to that, we also have a very beautiful t-shirt. I shall be trying that on a little later. And that's your IBM I update and special conference review for June 2023. For more like this, please do see our blog post on the Proximity website. I'm Andrew Nicholson. We're Proximity, the IBM I partners that are in your corner. We'll see you next time.